Change your thoughts, change your life.
Welcome to the Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life podcast. I'm your host, Nadia Delacruz, founder of the Wayne Dyer Wisdom Community. My guest this week is a talented musician, spiritual coach, and yoga teacher. She runs the Inner Garden Center for the Mind, Body, and Soul, where she works with individual clients through her coaching program. She also works as a track and field coach and cross-country coach for her local school district. She joined me on the podcast 2 years ago now to talk about a song she wrote that was inspired by one of Dr. Wayne Dyer's teachings. She's currently working on her first book, a healing memoir titled Out of the Ashes, From Fear to Forgiveness and the Freedom Found in Letting Go. Sarah Dion Brooks Shriver, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me back. I am excited to be here.
Well, as you know, I just love your music, and so do my kids, by the way. For anyone who hasn't heard it yet, I love to listen to, you've got a couple of albums out on Spotify. And you're a talented and accomplished singer-songwriter, and that's where we first connected. And of course, the mutual love for Dr. Wayne Dyer, and he had an influence on both of our paths. But you're actually such a creative powerhouse with so many talents, and I'm excited to have you back on to talk about this writing process that you've been in.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited as well. I've wanted to write a book, and I've known I'm going to at least write one. I just didn't realize it was coming so quickly, and then it came, and now I get to work on editing.
I have heard that editing is the hardest part because it's less of a flow and more of a grind. But then I think that's also where you can, work your vision into life. So I'm excited that I got a sneak peek at what you've been working on and that we get to talk about it today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking that sneak peek. I really appreciate having the beta readers and the feedback. It has really helped me try to polish it up a little bit more.
So you actually have so many passions, like I mentioned in the intro. So tell us about what some of your passions are in life.
Well, there's music. I've loved music for a very long time. I love to pour out my expression. I feel like it's a language I really understand. Not so much the theory. I don't really want to dive into that stuff, but just the feeling and the emotion behind it. I've realized more and more I'm quite an empath, and I feel deeply, and I feel emotion and energy pretty deeply around other people. And I love working on myself. I love healing. And as I gain new tools to heal, I want to help other people as well. So as I gain new tools, I poured that into my coaching program, and so now I get to work with clients as well. So that's a passion of mine, is really as I continue to heal and find ways that have helped me, I like to present them to other people and help guide them as well, if it resonates with them. One of my big passions is working with kids. So I am a head track coach for one of our local middle schools, and I'm also the head cross-country coach. So we have 205 kids on our team so far this season, and I love working with the kids. I think one of my biggest passions in life is genuinely just being real with people. I want genuine. I don't want fake. And the more I have these beautiful in-depth conversations with people where we can unapologetically be ourselves, it just makes me yearn for more of that connection. I don't want drama or gossip or any of that other stuff. I just want to live. And as I continue to find my truth, pour that into my work and my art and my music and the students and clients and the people that I come in contact with, so that maybe they can have their permission given to themselves to be the same, to be themselves, to be true to themselves, and to question. So I love questioning. I love finding answers. I love being curious. Did I cover? I love writing. I love music. I have a lot of... I do.
No, but that's good, because that means you have a passion for life, right?
I love life.
Yeah. Like having a million things that you want to do is a lot better than having nothing that you want to do, which can often be a symptom of depression, right?
Yes.
So when I get overloaded with all these ideas, I try to remind myself that like, that's, the other side of this could be very different. So I'm grateful for this, that I still have this hunger for life. But I do think that so many of us are really hungry for truth and authenticity, and people showing up and, owning their experiences in their lives and what they've been through. And I know that I am very drawn to people who speak openly and who don't overly censor themselves about really what they're feeling just for the sake of positivity. False positivity does not sit well with me. I know that probably early iteration of the self-help movement, which started, around the time we were born, probably. There was no self-help section in the bookstore when Louise Hay published her first book, and I think that was the early 70s. So it's changed a lot in our lifetimes. But early iterations, I think, were a lot about the power of positive thinking, which certainly has its place, because if you're just always expecting the worst, it's self-fulfilling prophecies. But if you're glossing over it, then it turns into what we call now spiritual bypassing, which is toxic in itself, right? So I'm with you. I share that same passion. I think even when I was a teenager and somebody would just be really real with how they feel and what they're experiencing, I was drawn to them, and I didn't understand why, and I still am. It's like whenever I meet people who have gone through a 12-step program, they bear their soul in that way that connects all of us. And I have so much admiration for that. It really draws me in. So what made you want to write a book, and why now? Like, what started this process for you? Because you said it came out of the blue.
It did. And I believe that there's things within each of us that we just are drawn to, and we know. I mean, for me, I know that there's more music for me to write, but I don't always know when. So sometimes I walk by the piano and I feel this urge or this nudge to sit down and play. And sometimes I'm like, okay, what is it? So it's like that intuition, that guidance, is there. As for writing a book, I've always known in the back of my head, I have at least one within me. And when I started writing meditations, it was that way as well. It's like, do I need somebody to teach me to write meditations? Because I'm also an Insight Timer meditation teacher. So I have meditations on there as well. And I just said, no, I don't want to copy anything anyone else did. I just need to close my eyes, ask my highest self what I need to say, and I need to flow. And what do I need right now? And so when in September, I love Hay House. I love Hay House Publishing. And so Louise Hay was one of the first spiritual teachers I grasped, and I love her work. And when I found out about Hay House years ago, I thought, that's who I want to publish with someday. And I didn't know, my ex-husband's a writer, and we did try to get into agents and things, and there's definitely a grind there. It's not that I don't want to grind for that. However, I just feel like right now I just need to learn what I need to learn. So I signed up for the Hay House writers workshop that they have. And so that was in September for a week. And I happened to have the week off because I was given jury duty. This is way too much information anyway. So I went to jury duty, I got released. And so I ended up doing this writers workshop every day, and I didn't have any client appointments. So it was perfect. And they had you at the very end of the writers conference. There was an opportunity to put a book proposal in by a certain date, which is coming up in a few weeks, and I need to get on that because it's due. But anyway, I decided to commit to writing at least an hour a day. And I got so excited into the project that I started waking up earlier and earlier. I would wake up without an alarm at 3:00 in the morning. I would come out here and make my tea drink or my coffee drink or whatever it was I was drinking in the morning. And I would come and I would lay on the floor and I would get settled in with my computer and I'd say, okay, what else in my life has made me feel uncomfortable? Let's dig into that. Let's pull back the pain. Let's rip open the scar a little bit more, or the scab, and just let's let this fester a little bit, because I realize these triggers are here to teach me. These emotions that I'm still holding on to, the ones that keep coming back, they're here to teach me. So I'd like to learn from them. And so when I revisited them, it was a lot. It was a lot Because in my writing style, I wanted to be present in that moment as a 5-year-old little girl, or as an 8-year-old little girl, or a 12-year-old, or a 15, the awkward years that we have and really painful memories that are not something I like to revisit. But I believe that that's where the answers are found, is underneath the pain. So that's what happened. And it became this beautiful project that I got out of bed for every single day for 5.5 weeks, almost. We had a trip in there in the middle that I took a week off for, but that was a really beautiful trip. We went to Scotland, so nice. I got to take a few days off and dive into my final chapter after I got home. So yeah, it was a beautiful journey. So did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So were there any themes that you found as you were digging up kind of these points of discomfort in your life? Were there themes that you found that either you had a turning point on, or even things that you're still wrestling with today?
Yes. The main themes. So the first part of the book is digging into where the seeds of fear were planted in my life and where those voices were created and those beliefs were created, this life around anyway. And I would dive into those and realize I have had a huge sense of fear of rejection in my life, and feeling like I'm not good enough, feeling like I'm a burden, feeling like I'm not strong enough to stand up for myself, that my voice doesn't matter, that I shouldn't ask questions. There was a lot of beliefs that I held strongly to for a very long time. So now as an adult, realizing that some of these still pull me in, some of these still they still trigger and come back up, and I want to learn from them so that I can let them go. And if they are from past life's experiences, which maybe some of them are, maybe many of them are, or passed down through, our genetic lines, I'd like to heal them. So this isn't something that needs to keep coming back, or if it comes back, at least I can see it from a different perception, of one of growth and love and kindness rather than being the victim. I really believe we're here to grow through life, and I really believe that everything is happening for us, and it's a gift happening for us. And so when I can see that everything that happens to us is a gift, I grow. Even the painful things.
Ram Dass, he went to India for many years. He studied with the guru. He studied with many different people. He traveled the world, and he said, after all of that work, he didn't lose one of his neuroses, but he got to a point where he would kind of invite them in for tea, and they became just sort of interesting pieces of his personality instead of these like really serious difficulties in his life. And I think we can come to see our uniqueness is kind of the flavor that makes us who we are. You and I are about the same age, and when I look back on my life, I'm shocked at how much the world has changed. And in seeing how much the world has changed, and cultural attitudes have shifted, language has shifted, I realize how much a product of our environment we are. There was a book where Dr. Wayne Dyer described us as environ-organisms, that we can't be separated from our environment. And I think about that sometimes because I don't want to believe that that's true. It almost like it takes the independence of, oh no, I can just be like, I don't know, a completely soul-centered, independent being. But I don't actually believe that that's true anymore. I think that we're so much a product of where we live, the time that we live. If that changes even a little bit, it can have dramatic changes. So, you mentioned the possibility of past lives. If we live multiple lives, then each one's going to be very, very unique and very, very interesting for that reason, because you could take the same soul at a different time and have a completely different experience. So how do we figure out what's ours? What's ours? What's theirs? What are we recognizing that's been patterns of, like generational trauma is such a common one that I think when my parents were kids, nobody was talking about generational trauma. There was a lot more that was swept under the rug. I mean, people would be born with mental or physical disabilities, and they would be sent off to some inpatient home somewhere, never to be talked about. And I feel like they did the same kinds of things with the wounds and the pains of their parents and their grandparents and their brothers and sisters and all of that. So it's a beautiful time that we live in now, where I feel like there's more space for us to come out and be like, no, this is what I'm seeing, and I'm not okay with all of it. And this is what I did, or this is what happened to me, or this is how I'm feeling, and I'm starting to question it now. I'm starting to question the validity of my own habitual thought process. That's where Wayne Dyer comes in big for me, because he was so great at giving examples of how to shift your thinking. When you change your thoughts, you change your life, right? That's why I'm doing this podcast. But I honor the vulnerability that you've had in putting pen to paper and sharing your own story. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think what's the most personal is also the most universal. What's interesting about your life experience that was actually very different from mine is that you got married very young. So I actually had kids later in life, and you had kids early in life. And I think that has a big impact on what stage of life we're in right now. Like, you and I are both very interested in, self-help and introspection and spirituality. We both identify as empathic. We feel things strongly. There's a lot going on in the world to process. We're moms. We love our kids deeply. But I feel like you have this next chapter opening up in front of you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm settled in here for a pretty good long while. But you were just 19 when you got married, and you had only known your husband, your fiance, for a matter of weeks. Is that right?
We got engaged after 2 weeks of knowing each other, and we were married 6 weeks later. Yeah.
So were your families excited about that? Like, did they voice any trepidation? Because I'll tell you, when I was 19, that was probably the wildest I ever was. And I went out and explored my freedom. So you went another way. But I think my parents would have been like, are you sure? Because it's such a big commitment. Were your families behind the marriage, or did you?
I'm going to say yes and no. So one, I grew up in a religion that it was very culturally acceptable to get married young, especially for young ladies. We were always taught growing up that a woman's place is in the home with her family. She's meant to be the homemaker, and the husband's call and duty is to take care of his family. And I was always brought up, you've read the book, it's a very sacred calling to be a wife and a mother. And that was ingrained within me all growing up. I always thought I would get married around 19 or 20. I just always did. That was just kind of what and again, I don't know if anyone necessarily said straight out, get married as soon as you can. It was more of just an understanding, and then we're going to have a lot of children. That was another part of it as well. So that was kind of growing up with it. It was a little fast. My family did not know him very well. So I had some sisters like, we're not really sure about this. But I'm somewhat stubborn, or have been, and I have realized this pattern in my life that I don't like people to tell me what to do. And so I wanted to prove everybody, no, this is the right person for me. And we're going to have an amazing life. And I'm so in love. And so I feel like I was a little bit swept off my feet at 19 years old. In a sense, it was kind of like a fairy tale. Yeah, his family was very accepting, and we knew them from church, so I knew the family more than I actually knew him. But I got to know him very well. A month after we were married, we moved to Florida, so that was 3,000 miles away from my family. So
Now,
I got.
Did you grow up in Oregon? Is that right?
I did. Yes, I grew up in Oregon.
Florida, that is about as far as you can get, and still be in the same country.
Yeah, it was. And it was exciting. And it was an adventure the first time I'd ever lived out of state. So to me, people would joke around that we were gypsies. We moved around so much. I looked at it like an adventure. I wasn't focusing on the toxic stuff at that point. I just thought, oh, well, this is,
A fairy tale. Yeah.
Yeah. And I kept telling everybody how happy I was and how in love I was. And yeah.
You fell in love and you got married and you're traveling. So did you start having kids right away?
We did. A year after we were married, a year and 2 months, we had our first child. And 17 months later, we had our second. 2 years later, we had our third. 2 years later, we had our fourth. And then 3 years later, we had our fifth. So by the time I was 29, I had 5 children.
Wow. Before
So
5 kids.
Mm-hmm.
That is a handful. So I mean, I've lost touch with the whole world having little babies at home. I'm just like, I haven't been to a movie in years, and like I don't know like what's going on in pop culture, or I sort of lost touch with a lot of things, but I didn't feel bad about it. I was just really in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Now that my kids are getting a little bit bigger, I'm kind of reintegrating, but it's different. But I feel like when you're raising kids, it's so consuming and so busy that you don't really have time to think. So you're going to argue with me. So tell me when...
No, I'm not arguing. I'm agreeing with you.
I'm wondering, like, okay, so like you're in this fairy tale, you're very young, but you're living the dream, and your families are excited about it. You're doing what you grew up believing was the best life to have, the best approach to life. When was it where you started to go, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be?
Having one child was exciting. I always wanted to be a mother. And having a second child that close together was overwhelming for me, but I didn't want to admit that. And it wasn't him. He was a very easy, beautiful, wonderful baby, but I had a toddler. I had a 17-month-old too. And taking them into public, going to the grocery store, having to take 2 screaming children, a 2-year-old and I don't even know how old he was, maybe 5 weeks at the time. I remember carrying one like a football in this arm and the other one like this, humiliated, walking out to my car, feeling like I will never take my children to the grocery store again. And after that, I didn't take...
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, because they want this and they want this, and and I have so much compassion for families when I see their children throwing tantrums in the store, because I've been there. Not my favorite memory. I think the reality for me hit when, before you have children, you just think you're going to know how you're going to be as a mother and how you're going to be as a wife and how your life is going to be, and how your fairy tale fantasy of what your life is going to be like with your husband and everything. Like, this image in my mind was not turning out like I thought it was. I loved my children. And I did love my husband. We did not have the healthiest relationship, but I did love him. Especially in the beginning, but it got harder and harder as we went on. But I think it was hard because you can read books, you can be given advice, but every child has their own unique spirit. And so they come in, and if you think you've got it down with one, well, the next one brings you something more. And so I think that it was a beautiful eye-opener. I mean, I have very beautiful memories of my children when they were little, and I sat and I held them a lot, and I spent a lot of time with them. But I also was dealing with the fact that I think I was still a child myself in some ways. I mean, getting married at 19 now, when I think about that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't have the emotional stability that I have now. And so how could I teach my children to have emotional stability when I didn't have it? When I was taking everything personal, when I was living through in and out of depression, when I was trying to deal with life, I felt very disappointed. And so... yeah, I think I just felt...
If you move to another part of the country, too, then maybe you lose the support system that you thought you were going to have with your family around.
Well, we moved back and forth. So we moved across the country. We moved every year and a half for 18 years. So we didn't stay anywhere.
Is that for work or for the next adventure?
I think I've always narrated it as the grass is greener on the other side, and he struggled staying in one place for too long, and found reasons to leave, and there were always reasons to leave, and I just continued. Somebody once told me something recently, and it really made me think about how I processed life. And she said, she taught herself to not care because it didn't hurt as much as she didn't care. And so I continued to just say, okay, well, this next adventure is going to be okay. This is maybe where we're supposed to be. So I'd get excited for the next place, and I would try not to get my roots too deep. And when I did start to get my roots too deep, and then, we need to move again. There's something wrong with this place. It would hurt more. So again, I just continued to try not to care, but deep inside I cared. And I think there was some bitterness growing, and I don't like seeds of bitterness. So I'm grateful that I can be in a space now where I can pull those out and tug those out and love and forgive and let go. I'm glad I'm not in that relationship anymore. I'm glad I can feel more stable and work on my, my relationship with my higher self, and all of that. And I didn't feel like I was in a safe space to do that in my past relationship.
So how long were you married?
We were married for 18 years.
That's almost a lifetime. I mean, it's not from our perspective, but
Well, yeah. I mean, I was 19 when I married him. I had his name for 19 years. And then I met my husband, Shad. So now I carry his last name. So hopefully for the rest of my life. Like, I'm planning on this as my name for the rest of my life. We're going to live a long, long, long life together.
Well, I'm sure you learned a lot about yourself during those years. I'm sure you learned a lot about what you need and what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not willing to tolerate. So it says a lot about the person that you choose walking out of that. I'm thinking about the book Eat, Pray, Love and the movie that went with that. And there's this scene where she's like crying on the bathroom floor. And it makes me wonder, like, was there a point for you where you're just like, this is it? Because making that decision when I'm sure you were very, very committed to this man, for better or worse, especially with your religious upbringing, right? I think that makes it even harder to maybe listen to your own feelings when things are not a good fit. Was there a moment where you just knew this had to end?
Yes. Well, and I remember when I was 19 and I had been sitting in a class, it was a religious class, and we had been taught, the teacher had said how 60% of marriages end in divorce, and I was like, that will never be me. And I feel like in life, I mean, I wrote the song Humble Pie, so there's like, I feel like anytime I've said, this is how it's going to be, I feel like I've been handed a slice of humble pie in order to, eat into that a little bit. I think the first time I really considered the divorce was when my husband sat down with me for about 2 hours asking why we were married and went to tell me every reason we should be divorced. And when he finished that conversation with me, I thought, why are we married? Because I agree with every point that you have. And we went back and forth on a handful of things, and our relationship had just gotten very toxic and very unhealthy at the end. And I really, I don't want to get into too many details of what was going on in that time, but there was a point, he ended up getting another job, took off to Florida, and so he was gone.
Left again.
He did, but I didn't go with him this time. The kids and I stayed in this town that we're in, and I knew I was going to raise the kids here. So at this time, I was working 3 jobs, and I was taking care of the family, and I was paying all of our bills. So I knew I could do it, and that was very empowering for me. So now I had the means to leave. I didn't before. There was no way I had any way I could leave before, so that was never an option. Now I could, because I was working. Do I want to work 70 hours a week? No, but I could, and I was doing it, and that was very empowering to me to know that I could. So there was that, and I remember hugging him goodbye before he got in the car, and with this feeling that was probably the last time I was ever going to hug him, because I didn't think we would be able to. I didn't feel like it was worth holding on to anymore. And there were a handful of things that completely solidified it, but I think that was probably a turning moment when he left and drove away, and I felt a huge sense of relief.
Based on the conversation that he had with you, it sounds like, he was probably thinking the same thing.
He was. And then fear jumps in of like, no, we can't do this to our family. And then it was like, no, And I'm sure his narrative has changed over the years. It's okay. We all have our own narrative. I don't want to dishonor his soul. I know one of the greatest things that I've learned through creating the program. I have a whole chapter in my program, my coaching program, about triggers and blame. And there's a quote that says, the people that trigger you the most are life's greatest teachers, helping you understand what is still unsettled within you, what needs healing. I mean, I'm very paraphrasing this. I've thought so much about that. And I also have studied under Dr. Sue Morter quite a bit. She wrote the book called The Energy Codes, and she teaches this really beautiful concept, which I've heard slightly in some different books as well, but she calls it the bus stop conversation. And she says, before we come down to earth, we're up there with our spirit families or whoever these beautiful spiritual beings are, and we're all talking and we're getting ready to get on this bus down to earth. And we're like, yeah, what are you going to go down for? Oh, I'm going to learn courage. And everyone's like, yeah, that's so cool. And they go around this circle of like, what are we going to go down for? And then I step up and I'm like, I'm going to go down for forgiveness, but not just like level 2 forgiveness. I'm going down for level 10 forgiveness. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And they're like, yeah, this is so great. And then I say, but I need one of you guys to come down and live in my life with me in such a way that I get to learn forgiveness. Whether you're an abusive husband or you're somebody who's killed my whole family with drunk driving or whatever it is, I need one of you to step up and take that call so that I can learn what I came here to learn. And so up comes this beautiful soul saying, I'm going to be that this time for you. So that lesson from Dr. Sue Morter really made me perceive life differently, of anyone who's ever triggered me, of the toxic blame that I used to throw on my ex-husband, of understanding his soul, and my soul came down here. I had beautiful lessons to learn. It's easier for me in life now to not have contact with him. We don't have a healthy relationship. I think it's better for me. I don't feel respect from him, so it's just easier for me to continue to not have any contact with him. But I do forgive him. So did you get through the whole book?
I did.
Okay, because there's a whole chapter on forgiveness, and I think that's really why we're here. So that's helped me grow a lot. So I look at it differently. Does it mean it's any easier when we're standing in the fire, right? And I love the concept of the phoenix coming out of the ashes. That is, I've written a song from Out of the Ashes. The book is called Out of the Ashes because I love the idea that we burn up in life in certain situations. We burn up with emotions, with anger and bitterness and fear and all of those burdens and those feelings that we're not enough and all of those beliefs that we've planted. We burn through them. And then at some point when we're finally ready we get the chance to rise and see it from a loving perception, a higher perception, maybe the perception of God or universe or soul or spirit. We get to see it from a whole different perception when we're no longer attached to those emotions. And that's where we get to learn. That's where we get to forgive. And that's where we get to let go. And then sometimes life pulls you back into the fire for something else that you get to learn and grow. And the things that keep coming back up for us over and over and over. So one of the biggest things for me in writing my book, I thought that I'd be healed when I was done. I thought that writing that book, it was going to heal me. And I couldn't wait to just be like, close that book and I'm healed. And I think it shook me a little bit to realize that healing is not a one and done thing. It's a process. It's a process I get to choose. I get to take one layer down and I get to look into that and heal it and love into it and have compassion and understanding and forgiveness and let that go. And then I get to pull down the next layer and look into that as well. And some things can be forgiven and let go, much easier. And for me, this book has really been that. And so maybe that's why the editing has been a deeper process for me, because there's more layers to go through and revisiting them and making them stronger. And it's a journey. And right now I'm in track season. So I'm like, I don't even know. I don't think I have that capacity to wake up at 3:00 in the morning and write right now when I'm waking up just thinking of track. So, but yeah.
So the title, Out of the Ashes, when you chose that, what are the ashes of your life? Is it all of those things? Is it the marriage and the difficulties that went through that? Is it all of the things that you've processed and built on over the years?
I think the ashes represent Well, one, that the fire's no longer burning. The fire's no longer burning so I can learn from it, because often when we're in the fire, it's too painful to see what is happening for us at that moment. I know sometimes I've sat there and said, I may not understand why this is happening, but someday I will, and someday I'll be grateful, but it still doesn't take away what we're supposed to feel. And I also I want to experience what I'm here to feel and learn. I think that I was in a Tony Robbins conference in December. It was Date with Destiny, and I remember him talking about the greatest stories that are written. They have a villain that's pretty strong so that they can have a better hero. But if the villain's not that strong, the hero isn't as, we don't like cheer for the hero as much, because we want to see them overcome their adversity, whatever that looks like. So to me, I think the ashes represents the fire that burned, and what can I learn from them? It's kind of like going through and just seeing them from a new space in time. So that's anything, again, that has ever made me feel uncomfortable. The disappointment I felt in failure in life, right? A feeling like I failed at my children with the divorce and my marriage. And I failed myself because I couldn't hold it together. Again, fear of rejection, all of these fears that were really inside of me. And I think, honestly, the fire is fear. So I feel like when we are in the most painful moments in life, it's because we are so consumed in our fear. And that's when we can't see things. And to me, I really feel it's like fear and love, yin and yang, light and dark, right? Like when I'm in a place of love, when I'm in the perception of my highest self and see things from the perception of love, I have no fear. When I'm in the perception of fear, it's hard for me to breathe. I clam up, I shut down. Fight, flight response. I've been there before. It's familiar, our patterns that we feel. We've gone there before. So I need to continue to imagine myself rising to a place of love so that I can come as my highest self and see you as your highest self, so that I can be loving presence. That's how I want to show up in this world. I want to be loving presence. I want to have compassion and acceptance and understanding for everyone I come in contact with, including myself. That is my mission statement in my life right now, of really just loving myself and accepting myself where I'm at and others where they're at. I feel like I'm answering questions and then I feel very far off when I come back to it. So,
I'm with
okay.
you. We're with you.
Thank you.
I love that you say that the fire's not burning anymore, and therefore you have a little bit of distance from that. It can bring some clarity.
Mm-hmm.
This moving forward, like you said, maybe 60% of marriages end in divorce. And from what I hear, most people who get divorced perceive it as a failure. And that always breaks my heart, because I'm not seeing it that way looking from the outside in. So, and I think there's this perception too that, you very publicly get married and declare your love to each other, and that really means something to you. I think it means something to all of us. I hope it does, but like, we would be walking through life with our eyes closed if we didn't consider how we actually feel in the moment and what's working and what's not working. So I don't think that commitment that we make early in our life is one that is necessarily going to be the right fit later in life, and that we need to let that process happen. We need to be honest with one another, and we need to be growing together, or we're growing apart. So
yeah,
this painful process that you've had that has fueled a path to forgiveness is not for the faint of heart. I think being human is not for the faint of heart. I think that if we're honest, life is sometimes really impossibly hard, at least emotionally, and sometimes physically. But it's not impossibly hard all the time. Sometimes it's impossibly beautiful. And so we have this balance. But I was raised in an environment where the messages that I perceived from the world around me was that life is easy. And it's good. You just have to work hard, do what you're supposed to do, and you have a good life, one and done. But everybody was hiding the pain that they were in. Everybody was sweeping things under the rugs. And so it took me a long time to realize that everybody's going through something. Everybody has pain. Some people have unbelievable stories that they have lived through that you wouldn't think anybody could live through. And this is human too. This is life too. So I'm grateful that the generations that are coming up today don't have the same level of taboo that we had around mental health and around individuality and around emotional intelligence, and like opening our minds to maybe things aren't quite as cut and dry and simple as we wanted to pretend that they were. I mean, how many years were women staying in abusive marriages because they didn't have another way to survive, and that was just what you did? I remember hearing about, I think it was from maybe the 50s, where this woman was saying that if I had went to the police and said my husband was beating me, they would have just laughed at me because that was okay, like you were property, you know? So we've actually come a long way. I think that we can see very clearly what's still not going well in the world, and we're seeing more clearly, hopefully, what's happening to the planet before it's irreversible. But there's a long history here of abuse of power. There's a long history of dishonesty. There's a long history of just get in line and do your job and don't talk about it. You know, our parents and grandparents' generation, most of them didn't learn to talk about feelings. So we're sort of trailblazers, you know, still after all this time. So I guess I see you doing your part in that, and I want to honor the context of your life, that life is really hard. I have amazing things in my life. Sometimes my life is really hard. You know, I have good days and bad days just like anybody. Everybody does. But I think when we can come together and go like, you know, like this happened, or this is how I'm feeling, and not have to pretend to be okay all the time. Sometimes it's okay not to be okay. Then we can help each other through this. We can walk each other home.
Yes.
So now that you've written the book and you had this hope, this vision that the process was going to be the finished healing, and find that it's still ongoing, it seems like writing can be incredible therapy and help you really dive into into that shadow work. Is it something that you would recommend for other people?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think one thing I loved about the writer's workshop is they said, you know, if you feel any desire to write. It can be so therapeutic. You know, not everybody's writing to be the bestseller. Some people are just writing to get their story down for their grandchildren, or just for them. Or for me, it wasn't about so much getting my story down to be remembered by. It was more of, I want to open the uncomfortable. I want to talk about the things that made me feel uncomfortable, because that's how I can heal it. I feel like what you said, you know, we have hidden so much of our pain and we don't talk about it. Now, I'm not saying our dirty laundry necessarily needs to be hung up for everybody. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when we hide it within, I really believe that we are trapping those emotions within in the energy of our body. You know, like Louise Hay will say, and Dr. Sue Morter will say, and many, many, many teachers, beautiful masters that I have read, talk about what those emotions are doing to our body, and dis-ease and all of that. And so to me, I'm like, I don't want to go through this anymore. I don't like triggers that make me feel uncomfortable. Now, okay, if I'm supposed to feel it, let me feel it. If I have a funk, so I'm going to give you a quick example. Like I said, I'm working with clients through my program, so I get to redo this stuff all the time. And so I'm learning to practice it over and over and over and over again. And sometimes I laugh that it is not completely mastered, but then again, one layer at a time, right? But I always tell my clients, I'm like, I am not some master guru. I am real, and this is my life, and I will share my life. I like being a coach because I can do that. I can talk about my life experiences and be real and raw and open, because if I can be real and raw and open, it gives them permission to be, if they feel safe enough to be. And I always want to provide a safe space for that. But in January, let me run it back a little bit further. Last year, I had been around some people, and beautiful souls, beautiful people, but they were having a bad day. And I was sitting in the car with them, and I think I was just hearing them just griping about some other people. And I just felt this energy. I'm like, I don't like how I feel. And so I was talking to my husband later, and I said, whenever I start to have low energy conversations, whenever I start to spiral and just whine and complain, can you please help me, like trigger a word, like some word? And he's like, well, what word? And I said, butterfly. I put this in my book, so you might remember this, but, butterfly, right? Because it's just softly, gently rising. Well, in January, I needed another little shake-up reminder. And so I started catching myself every time I would start to complain, and I'd stop. And even a thought, I could be by myself. I could be talking to myself as I was driving somewhere. I mean, I do. I talk to myself all the time, or talk to whoever's, around me in this beautiful angelic realm. But I was talking, and I'd stop, and I'd say, okay, stop. What are 2 things I'm grateful for? And so I would start saying things I was grateful for. And what I found was joy. And it was underneath that complaint, when I could push that aside and focus on what I was grateful for, I felt joy. And just a month before my Date with Destiny experience at Tony Robbins, we were supposed to write down all of these emotions that we feel on a regular basis every week. And I printed off this list of 120 emotions, and I was highlighting the ones I felt that were resourceful and unresourceful, and joy and calm were not on there. And it really was like, I want to feel joy and calm. Why aren't I feeling them? Because I'm not intentionally doing anything to feel them. I'm whining, I'm complaining, I'm feeling annoyed, I'm feeling irritated. So again, I really want to set intention how I show up in this world. So that was one beautiful gift that I was giving myself of, I know what it feels like to feel joy, and I know how to get it now. So I had about a week and a half of that. And then something happened. I don't know, somebody who was in a mood, maybe it was my daughter. I don't know, that time of the month or the moon or who knows, whatever reason, I got in a funk for about another week. And I was just like, I guess I get to practice now. I get to practice finding gratitude when I'm in the mood, or sometimes I'm just going to be in a mood, So I get a lot of opportunities to practice, and that's what I do appreciate that. And then I also wanted to share something I've really learned in my last few years since talking to you last time is us as human beings. We're here to have this human experience so that we can feel these things physically, because our spiritual beings, I think I heard Kyle Gray say that actually, was by the reason we're here in our physical bodies is so that we could feel these strong emotions and feelings that only we can in the physical form. And that really made me think. And I also start to think about how I know I feel this way. And the more I perceive others, I feel like they feel this way too. When we feel valued, seen, loved, and appreciated, we feel happy. When we don't feel seen, when we don't feel heard, when we don't feel valued or appreciated or loved, a lot of other issues can happen. You think of the abuse and trauma that people have gone through in their life, or relationships that are unhealthy, or even, I ask myself a lot with the self-acceptance that I'm really working on this year is, okay, well, am I seeing really what's going on inside of myself? Am I accepting myself? Am I valuing myself and loving myself? Am I seeing my husband? Am I really hearing what he's saying, or am I only perceiving what I think he's saying? That's a funny conversation we've had recently. Am I listening to my children? Am I really hearing what they're saying? Am I seeing them? Do they know that they're being seen? Because I think the greatest gift we can give another is our quality time with them, and seeing them, like presence, being present with them and accepting them for who they are, where they're at. Because tomorrow they can be in a different space, but if we can just sit with them and be with them where they're at, I feel like that's the greatest gift that we can give another. And it's the greatest gift we can give ourselves, when we can love and accept ourselves where we're at. Today is a good day for me. I enjoyed today. It was busy. I'm going to be proud of myself. A few days ago, I was a little grumpy. I'm going to love myself where I'm at. Sometimes I just need a little piece of chocolate, or I just need to drink more water, or just really becoming more in tune with yourself. And that's one thing I've really, really enjoyed in the last few years, is getting to know myself better and just learning to accept where I'm at. And I like that, and I want to do more of that.
It's very hard to be present with ourselves. It's very hard to just sit with what is and allow it and still feel compassion, more compassion than judgment. If you've ever seen a little kid who'll be like, I'm feeling fussy. I'm just feeling fussy today. And I love that because it's like, you know, it's okay. You don't have to be feeling great all the time, but to have that awareness of like, this is what I'm going. And then if you can take it a step further and go, okay, well, what might help when I'm feeling fussy, or what might help when I'm feeling sad? What can I do? What, you know, what is in my power to take action on? And sometimes it's as simple as, you know, a bubble bath or a cup of tea or calling a friend or reading a book or whatever it is. Sometimes there's really simple things that we can do that if we don't stop and pay attention to where we're at, how could we ever stop and pay attention to where anyone else is at? And you're right, it's so precious with our children because, you know, they need that. They yearn for that. And how blessed we are that they yearn for that from us, even when it's hard for us to offer it.
We get so busy. We get so caught up in our stuff, you know, realizing that that quality time is what they yearn for. You know, my youngest is 16. He's the last one at home. And it's really weird. And it, you know, like you said, we are in different chapters of our lives. You know, we are about the same age. And yet my children are all growing older, which gives me the ability and the time to be able to go and do these things. But I don't get to raise them anymore. And so I now understand the wisdom people would tell me when I would hold my babies that would say, hold them more, spend more time with them. And I would be sitting there frazzled going, you don't understand. These kids are so much sometimes and I'm tired. And again, you know, I wasn't always able to, you know, I did the best I could with the tools I had. And I loved my children. I love, and I still love my children. But when they were little, I really felt like I did a good job of holding them and just being with them when they were little. And so, you know, when you were talking about, when I mentioned failing earlier, I am grateful for my first marriage. Even if I feel like we didn't continue on, I'm very, very grateful that we didn't continue on because I am very at peace and happy with where I'm at. And I know I'm supposed to be here. So I'm very, very grateful for my husband. He and I communicate well. We have a good relationship. It's been 8 years and it's so easy with him. It's just, we never fight. Like if we have a disagreement, we talk about things. And it's like, I have learned a new way to communicate with my partner. And it's just, I love it. I love it. So there's no regrets.
I'm so happy that you two found each other. You know,
me too.
All the people in the world. And it's funny that you say that because my husband was the only relationship I ever had where we would get upset and we would talk about something and it would actually get better afterwards. You'd think that's what's supposed to happen, but with every relationship I had prior to that, like if I was upset about something or they were upset about something, it wouldn't go anywhere. There was no resolution. You know, it would just sort of escalate, and then at some point it would peter out, but it was never resolved. So that's one of the reasons why I married him, is because I saw so much compatibility in the fact that this was something I hadn't seen with a partner before, where we can actually talk through things and make it better. And like, you know, sometimes we'll get into a fight about something, and then at the end he'll be like, I feel a lot better. Like, I'm glad that we talked. And I'm like, no guy has ever said that to me.
I know.
It's constructive.
It is. I mean, my husband and I had a funny conversation this last weekend because, well, years ago when we were first married, we had the conversation. It was over text, which is probably not the best way. You know, we'd been married for maybe a year, and he was busy at work, and he texted me something saying he was fine. Well, I took that as he must be mad at me, and all day long I was just mad. I was just like, I don't know why he's mad at me, da-da-da-da-da. And he gets home from work, and he's just like, what's going on? Because he can read my energy. I definitely do not hide it. Like, I am, you know, it's on my face. I wear it on my face, not on my sleeve. It's here. And I said, well, you know, he's like, how's your day been? I'm like, fine. He's like, okay. And he's just, you know, going about his business. He's like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine. And so I finally had to tell him, when I say I'm fine, it means I'm not fine. And so we had a big conversation the other day about why that is so confusing. And I found several articles online, and they were pretty funny, comical, about what women really mean when they're saying things. And he's just like, this is so confusing. Why can't you just say what you mean? So my husband is very good at communicating, and I am learning to say what I mean, because he can't read my mind. He can do a pretty good job, but communication is key to happy relationships. I am believing that.
So you're in a new phase of your life. You're a woman of many passions. What are you excited about right now?
Today, I'm excited to go to sleep tonight. It's been a long day. I'm excited for this year. I have big goals. This book, I definitely want to dive back into this when it's time. Right now, my bandwidth in my brain and time capacity is more focused on track for our team. We just are just a weekend, so this is our second week. I'm really excited to connect with as many kids as I can on that team. Being head coach, I do get a few extra minutes every time to talk to them, but then I don't get to work with them one-on-one in the same capacity as the other coaches do. So today I talked to the kids about affirmations, and I talked to the kids about the words they speak. Change your thoughts, change your world, and change your life, right? And so I was telling them, I said, how does it make you feel when you say, I can't do this. I suck. This is so hard. I said, feel that. Right? You feel that. I said, now what does it feel like when I say, actually, I can do this. I can do this. And so I just started talking to them about that. So I think I'm excited about just being able to show up and continue to better myself, learn, heal, work with my clients, write my music, spend quality time with those I love, and learn to continue to accept myself, and just hope that somewhere along the line, someone, if they pick up my book or they listen to one of my songs, or they ever hear a podcast that you and I have done together or whatever, that they can feel less alone, that maybe they can feel understood, they can feel, wow, someone else has gone through this, something similar, maybe not exactly, but I just want to connect us. I want us to feel that beautiful love connection that that's what we are. I just want to spread that in every capacity that I can. And I hope that came out in my book. I don't know as a reader if that did, but I hope it did, because I really believe that that's so much of what we're here to do, is as we learn to do better, we do better, right? As Maya Angelou said. So I'm excited to just continue taking one step forward at a time, and diving into my intuition more, and trusting that a little bit more, and keep moving forward and seeing what happens. I need to get that book proposal done, and if I don't get picked up by Hay House right now, then I'm going to put it on Amazon and self-publish it myself, and just go forward. I mean, the thing I like about Amazon is I've got a copy in my hand right now that it's not for sale, but I love the design. I love creating. So I think that's what I'm most excited about, is just to continue to create the life that I really dream of.
Mm-hmm. Words have power. You're making an impact. You're making an impact with the kids. You're making an impact with your music. You're making an impact with your writing. So whenever that process is ready to publish, you just let me know, and I'll be happy to spread the word. I'm excited
Thank you.
that I got a peek at what you're doing, and that we got to talk again today. I'm always interested in what you're putting out into the world, and thank you for spending this time with me today.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate the time with you. Thank you, Nadia.
So what's the best way for people to reach you?
Oh, good question. I have several websites. So I'm at saradionbrooks.com is my music site, where you can find my music. I'm on Facebook. Honestly, probably messaging me on Facebook would be one of the easiest ways to find me. I'm also theinnergardencenter.com is my business email, or my business website. So again, you can write messages on any of those, and I will get to them as soon as I can. So thank you.
Well, thank you for being here, and for all our listeners, thank you for following Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, and telling your friends about it. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other. Namaste.